Before we start, I want you to envision devoting your existence to someone who ultimately regards you as an inconvenience. Picture offering everything, your hours, your strength, your affection, and then being informed you're simply obstructing. Follow my story until the end and hit subscribe if this resonates with you. And let me know in the comments from which city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. This narrative isn't fantasy. It's my reality. A reality I remained quiet about for far too long. If you've ever experienced being undervalued, overlooked, or dismissed, remain with me. This isn't solely my narrative. It could be yours as well. Before we start, subscribe to the channel and share in the comments where you're viewing from. My name is Margaret Turner. I'm years old and I reside in a peaceful neighborhood just beyond Portland, Oregon. I never imagined I'd be sharing my narrative with the world this way. But here I am because quietness, I've discovered, is where bitterness flourishes. And I've been quiet for far too long. It began after I departed from my husband. I was in my late 40s. And after years of tolerating his rage, his control, his subtle brutality, I departed. It nearly destroyed me, but I managed it. I departed for my own mental health and for my daughter Emily. She was in her early 20s then, completing university so filled with promise. I believed she'd be proud. I believed she'd comprehend. But instead she became distant. She claimed I abandoned our family, that I destroyed everything. She held me responsible. So I remained close. She wed young, bore children quickly. Her career required extended hours and her marriage, well, it didn't endure. Suddenly she was a single mother of 2. And I was present, constantly present. I relocated into the guest cottage behind her property. I prepared meals. I changed diapers. I transported the kids to school, to soccer practice, to birthday celebrations. I endured through fevers and science projects, first heartbreaks and nightmares. I supported it all silently without requesting much. I believed that was what love signified. You provide, you support, you appear. But Emily, she never warmed. If anything, she became colder with time. She'd snap at me before the kids, roll her eyes, inform me I was too involved, too traditional, too much. You spoil them too much, she'd declare. They'll never mature properly with you hovering like that. Sometimes I'd overhear her on the telephone with friends, laughing. My mom, she's essentially free childcare with viewpoints. What can I do? And I'd chuckle too softly from the kitchen, pretending it didn't hurt. But it did. Oh, it did. What sustained me were the children, my grandchildren. They attached to me like I was their foundation. They'd rush into my embrace after school, snuggle beside me on the sofa. When they matured, they'd confide in me about everything. School, infatuations, arguments with their mom. I understood their hearts. I was their secure haven. And yet, I couldn't disregard the way Emily observed me, like I was something fleeting, a silhouette in the background of her existence. Not a mother, not a woman with a history, just a figure that cooked, cleaned, and ensured her life didn't collapse. I started to question if she ever truly noticed me at all. Then arrived the day that transformed everything. It commenced with weariness, not just tiredness, but a profound exhaustion that wouldn't depart. I couldn't walk from the kitchen to the porch without needing to rest. I was dropping weight. My hands trembled. The physician conducted some tests, then additional tests. Then he seated me down with those eyes that attempt to cushion the impact. Pensive. Aggressive. I returned home that day with a silence heavier than anything I'd ever borne. I didn't understand how to inform Emily. I was frightened not of the disease but of her response. What if she perceived it as just another burden? I waited 3 days. Then I informed her. She glanced up from her device, blinked, and stated, "Oh well, we'll manage something." Her tone was so emotionless, so remote. Later that week she mentioned it casually. "You should probably employ a nurse, Mom. I really don't have the availability for all that." That moment, that's when I ceased pretending. She didn't inquire how I felt. She didn't volunteer to accompany me to appointments, just employ a nurse, like I was someone else's burden now. So I did. I lifted the telephone, and that decision made in silence with a heart still hurting would be the first step toward everything that followed next. I just didn't realize it yet. The nurse arrived on a Wednesday morning. Her name was Lisa Coleman, 38 years old, with short auburn hair and compassionate eyes that had clearly witnessed a lot. She possessed that type of gentle strength, the kind of presence that didn't demand space but somehow occupied it anyway. Emily wasn't home when she first visited. It was just me sitting on the porch wrapped in a blanket, pretending the sharp Oregon air didn't pierce through my bones. Lisa approached with a clipboard and a smile that didn't seem manufactured. Not like the ones I was accustomed to. "Mrs. Turner?" she inquired. "Margaret," I corrected. "Just Margaret." She nodded. And from the moment she entered inside, something changed. There was no discomfort, no uncertainty. She wasn't invasive or excessively cheerful. She just recognized me. Not as a patient, not as a burden, just a woman who required a little assistance. The first week was straightforward. Medication schedules, meal preparation, light housework, physician's appointments. But Lisa accomplished more than that. She observed things. She recognized when my hands shook before I even did. She brought warm socks without being requested. She refilled the bird feeder because she thought the view might brighten you up. Small things. Things Emily hadn't accomplished in years. It wasn't just her actions. It was how she conversed with me, like I mattered, like my thoughts weren't a burden. We'd sit on the porch after lunch and I'd inform her about the garden I used to maintain before my body betrayed me. She'd listen, truly listen, and then say something like, "You should inform me which flowers to plant. I've got the hands, you've got the vision." I hadn't smiled like that in a long time. When Emily visited to see me, and I say see me generously because she mostly stood in the doorway browsing through her phone, she didn't inquire how I was feeling. Her eyes moved around the house, concentrated on what Lisa was accomplishing or not accomplishing. "How's the nurse?" she inquired one afternoon, sipping her iced coffee like it was the only thing that mattered. "She has a name," I responded. Emily lifted an eyebrow. "Okay, how's Lisa?" "She's wonderful," I said, maybe too strongly. "She takes excellent care of me." Emily didn't respond. She just nodded. Her lips pressed tight and departed a few minutes later. No farewell embrace. No checking my prescriptions. Nothing. It was around that time I started recognizing the transformation in myself. The more Lisa cared for me, the more I understood how little care I'd permitted myself to receive over the years. Not just during the illness but before. During the marriage, after the divorce, even with Emily, especially with Emily. One evening, Lisa sat with me while I waited for the results of another scan. I was quiet, spiraling in my own mind, and she said gently, "You've carried a lot of people for a long time, haven't you?" I just looked at her. "You don't have to keep supporting everyone up," she added. "Let someone support you for once." I wept that night. Not just tears, those deep aching sobs you save for when you know no one's listening. Except someone was, and she didn't look away. The strange thing was Emily began visiting more frequently after that. But it wasn't warmth she brought. It was energy. Tense, distracted, sharp, like she was watching, waiting, measuring. She posed additional inquiries, but they weren't concerning me. "How many hours does Lisa labor? Does she prepare meals for you as well? Do you truly require someone present daily?" It wasn't worry. It was ownership, dominance. Like she was attempting to re-establish her position in a home she'd long deserted emotionally. Please hit the subscribe button if this resonates with you, and let me know in the comments if you've been in a similar situation. One evening after she departed suddenly, Lisa gazed at me and inquired, "Does she consistently speak to you like that?" And for the first time in my existence I stated, yes. And I permitted her. The reality settled between us like a dense mist. That evening I sat alone in my bedroom and contemplated everything I'd provided. Time, affection, years, and how invisible I'd become in the process. I examined the framed photographs of my grandchildren on the shelf, and then at a picture of Emily from her wedding. I used to believe that photo was lovely. Now all I witnessed was separation. The following morning I contacted my attorney. It was time to make an alteration. Silently, intentionally, I had nothing remaining to demonstrate. But I still had something remaining to safeguard. The day I met with the attorney, the atmosphere felt different. I could still sense the pain in my joints, the exhaustion from the previous night. But there was something else rising beneath all that. Something I hadn't experienced in years. 40. I'd made the call early that morning while Lisa was out collecting my medication. It was the same attorney who had managed my divorce decades ago. He was surprised to hear from me but gentle. We arranged a private meeting at his office for the following afternoon. I didn't inform Emily. When Lisa transported me there, she didn't pose questions. She simply adjusted the seat heater in the vehicle, handed me my scarf and said, "Call if you require me." I looked back at her before entering into the building. I wanted to say thank you, but the words remained in my throat. I think she comprehended. Sitting across from Mr. Holloway, my attorney, was surreal. We were older now. He'd become gray. I'd lost weight, but he still possessed that same calm, measured presence. As he browsed through the old paperwork, he glanced up at me and said, "You never revised your will after your divorce, Margaret." I nodded. "I understand. That's why I'm here." When I informed him what I desired, he paused. "Are you certain?" he asked gently. "This isn't a minor change." "I'm certain," I responded with a firmness that surprised even me. I didn't desire revenge. I didn't want to harm Emily. But I also couldn't continue pretending that our relationship was anything other than what it had become, a transaction. And now that I was finally being cared for with genuine compassion, I could perceive it clearly. My new will designated my grandchildren as equal recipients. I made arrangements to establish education trusts for them, and I included Lisa not because I owed her but because she deserved it. She treated me with dignity when no one else did. I signed the documents, sealed them away, and walked out of that office with a strange sense of tranquility. But that tranquility wouldn't endure long. Emily appeared unannounced 2 days later. She entered like she still resided there, barely acknowledging Lisa as she passed her in the corridor. I was in the kitchen attempting to consume something small. My appetite hadn't been excellent lately. She threw her purse on the counter and leaned against the refrigerator. "So," she said, arms folded, "you've been spending considerable time with the nurse." I blinked at her. "Lisa, her name is Lisa." "Right." Her tone was tense, sharp. "The children said she's been transporting them to school." "She volunteered," I said cautiously. "It assists me and they enjoy her." Emily laughed without amusement. "Of course they do. She's probably indulging them to gain your favor." I stared at my daughter, uncertain if I was shocked or just weary of being shocked. Why would she need to gain my favor? Emily hesitated. "I don't know. People have intentions. You're not innocent. Are you, Mom?" That word, innocent. After everything, after decades of cleaning up her existence and holding hers together with my bare hands, she called me innocent. I stood slowly, supporting myself on the edge of the table. "Lisa hasn't requested a single thing from me, Emily. Not once. And in case you haven't noticed, she's the only person treating me like I matter." That struck her. I saw it in her eyes, but she concealed it with a scoff. "Whatever. Just don't be foolish about your money." She left 5 minutes later. Didn't even say farewell. I sat in that silence for an extended time, staring at the front door she'd slammed shut. That evening, I found Lisa folding towels in the laundry room. She looked up at me with those steady eyes. "Difficult day?" she asked. I nodded. "They've all been difficult lately. But this one left a mark." Lisa didn't press. She just nodded and continued folding. It was the first time in years I felt truly observed. And more than that, I felt deserving of being observed. I realized then that love isn't just about blood. It's about presence, respect, kindness, and sometimes the people who give you those things aren't the ones who share your DNA. They're the ones who enter when everyone else exits. Days passed, and with each one I felt both stronger and weaker simultaneously, stronger in my determination, weaker in my body. The treatments were harsh. I'd sit through them in silence, letting the 4 drip into my veins like it was extracting pieces of me out instead of healing anything. My hair thinned. My appetite vanished. The mirror stopped feeling like my friend. I no longer recognized the woman staring back at me. But through it all, Lisa remained. She was there when the nausea struck. She was there when my legs failed one morning and I collapsed in the corridor. She caught me. Literally caught me and didn't let me fall. She stayed up late making bone broth from scratch when she discovered it was the only thing I could tolerate. She didn't just care for me. She cared about me. And Emily, she visited once every few days, perhaps. Sometimes with the children, sometimes not. She'd hover near the entrance like she had somewhere better to be. Always checking her phone, always distracted. Every visit felt like an obligation she couldn't wait to complete. One afternoon, after a particularly harsh treatment, I was lying on the sofa. A blanket pulled over me. Lisa sat quietly nearby, reading. Emily came in unannounced as usual, sunglasses still on, coffee in hand. She barely looked at me. "You really require her here every day?" she asked, nodding toward Lisa. Lisa didn't even flinch. He kept reading. "Yes," I said plainly. Emily snorted. "You're being theatrical. I mean, I know you're ill, but she's not family, Mom." That word again. Family. I turned my head slowly toward her. My voice came out quieter than I expected, but sharper than I intended. "No, she's not. She's something superior. She's present." Emily rolled her eyes and paced the room. "This is ridiculous. You act like I've never been here for you." "You haven't," I said, the words catching even me off guard. She froze, one foot mid-step, her mouth opened and closed like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. I didn't say more. I didn't need to. She left a few minutes later, muttering something about needing to collect the children. After she was gone, Lisa looked up from her book and said softly, "You okay?" "No," I whispered. "But I will be." Later that night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the quiet hum of the oxygen machine in the background. I contemplated everything I'd endured over the years. All the occasions I placed Emily's requirements before my own. All the birthdays, separations, breakdowns, and instances when I abandoned everything just to be present. And now I was requesting one thing, assistance, and she couldn't provide it. She didn't even attempt. That's when it struck me. This wasn't about her being occupied or overwhelmed or exhausted. It was about decision. And she'd selected distance repeatedly. The following morning, Lisa brought me breakfast on a tray. Toast, eggs, and sliced strawberries. I hadn't requested strawberries. He just remembered I enjoyed them. "Thank you," I whispered, accepting the tray with shaking hands. She smiled and said, "It's what you merit." That simple phrase remained with me all day. It was what I merited. Not the guilt, not the blame, not the cold visits or the eye rolls, not being regarded like a burden. For the first time in my existence, I let that thought flourish without shame. I merit more, and I wasn't frightened to claim it. Lisa became my companion, but in the finest possible way. She moved through the house with silent ease, never overwhelming, never intrusive, just present, steady, constant. And it was that consistency that began to heal something deeper in me, something I didn't even realize was damaged. She didn't probe, but she observed. The way I grimaced when I stood. The way I massaged my temples when a memory struck too hard. The way I gazed a second too long at the window when the grandchildren's laughter echoed faintly from the backyard. One afternoon I was sitting in the garden with a blanket across my lap when she came out with 2 cups of tea. It was cool for spring, but I preferred it that way. The air made me feel alert. She handed me a mug and sat beside me. "You always gaze out this window," she said gently. "What are you contemplating?" I didn't respond right away. I watched a blue jay hop along the fence, its feathers shimmering like silk in the breeze. "I think about how much I've provided," I said quietly, "and how little I've requested." Lisa didn't respond. She just sipped her tea and waited. "I raised Emily," I continued. "I held her when she was ill, when she wept over boys, when her marriage ended. I stayed up all night baking cupcakes for her children's birthdays. I canceled plans, skipped holidays, ignored my own health just to keep her existence moving. And she doesn't recognize it," Lisa said softly. I nodded. "Worse, she recognizes it and still regards me like I'm disposable." There was a long silence between us. Not uncomfortable, just full, like the air had weight. Then Lisa said something I'll never forget. "Sometimes the people we provide the most to are the ones who think we owe it to them." The truth of it stung, but it also soothed something raw inside me. She comprehended not just my situation, but me. That evening, I sat alone in the den and stared at the old filing cabinet where I kept my important documents: insurance, property deeds, medical directives, and my will. I'd never altered it. Not since my divorce. Everything still listed Emily as the sole heir. Back then it made sense. She was my only child, my legacy. But now she wasn't living like a daughter. She wasn't appearing like family. I thought about the grandchildren. Sweet, curious, kind-hearted. They'd been shaped more by my affection than Emily's presence. I thought about Lisa, how quickly she'd become more than just a nurse, a friend, a caretaker, a quiet protector. I knew what I had to accomplish. The next morning, I contacted Mr. Holloway again. We met 2 days later and I informed him firmly and clearly that I wanted to revise everything. My grandchildren, I said, they receive equal shares. And Lisa, she receives the house and the savings account. He raised an eyebrow. Your daughter, she receives nothing. He paused, then nodded slowly. Understood. I signed the papers with a hand that shook slightly, not from doubt, but from the weight of the decision. When it was finished, I felt lighter, freer, like I'd reclaimed something I didn't even realize was mine. Later that evening, Lisa found me on the porch again. You've been quiet today, she said. I made a decision, I replied. A significant one. She looked concerned but didn't press. I just realized, I continued, that I've spent my whole existence trying to prove my worth to people who never deserved it. Lisa placed a warm hand over mine. Then maybe it's time you stop proving and start living. I looked at her then, really looked at her, and for the first time in years I felt something settle inside me. Not peace, not yet, but purpose. The calm didn't endure. It never does it? A few days after I signed the new will, I overheard a conversation between Emily and one of the children. She'd stopped by unannounced again, claiming she just wanted to check in, though she spent most of the time fidgeting with her phone and asking questions that weren't really questions. Has the nurse been sleeping here? She asked my grandson when she thought I wasn't listening. I was in the hallway, out of sight, but her voice carried. Does she use Nana's car? What about the credit cards? Has she purchased anything for herself? My blood turned cold. It wasn't concern. It wasn't worry. It was investigation. I stepped into the room slowly. Emily, can I speak with you for a moment? She looked up, startled, then followed me into the kitchen. What is it? She asked, arms crossed. I looked her square in the eyes. Why are you interrogating my grandchildren about Lisa? Her expression flickered. Guilt, annoyance, and then defensiveness. Always defensiveness. I'm just trying to protect you, she said. You're sick, Mom. People like her take advantage of people like you. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I spoke calmly, evenly, like I was reading off a recipe card. Lisa has shown me more respect, more kindness, and more care in a month than you have in 10 years. Emily scoffed. She's being paid. And you? I asked. What's your excuse? She fell silent. Then she said the words that sealed everything for me. You're being stupid, Mom. You don't even know this woman. You're just lonely. That word, stupid. I stood up slowly, my legs trembling, not from weakness but from rage contained over a lifetime. I may be sick, I said, but I'm not stupid and I'm not lonely. I've just stopped confusing proximity with love. Her face went blank. I knew then that she sensed something had shifted, that the control she thought she had, emotional, financial, moral, was slipping. She left in silence that day, her heels clicking down the hallway like gunshots. Later that night, I sat at the dining table with Lisa and told her everything. She listened without interrupting, her face calm but concerned. Do you want me to step away for a while? She asked gently. Give things some space. No, I said firmly. This is my home. You are not the problem. We sat in silence for a moment. Then I reached for her hand and squeezed it. I need you here. Her eyes softened. Then I'm here. The next week went by quietly. Emily didn't come to see me. The kids still stopped by after school, happy and nice like always, but I could hear something in their voices, something wrong. Please hit the subscribe button if this resonates with you, and let me know in the comments if you've been in a similar situation. They seemed unsure, mixed up. Emily had told them something. I didn't know what, but I could feel it. And then one day I got a call from Mr. Holloway. Your daughter came to my office, he said. My heart sank. She asked about your will, pushed for details. I couldn't tell her anything, of course, but she thinks something's up. He's mad. I thanked him, hung up the phone, and sat quiet for almost an hour. Emily knew, or at least she thought she did. That evening, as the sun went down behind the trees and the sky turned gold, I walked into the garden and stood with no shoes on the grass. The air was cool, the wind strong, but I felt alive. This wasn't about money. It never was. It was about what we leave behind, about what stays after we're gone, not in bank accounts or house papers, but in people, in love, in memories. And I'd finally decided that what I left behind would not be silence. Not anymore. It happened the next morning. The knock on the door wasn't crazy. It was sharp, firm, the kind of knock that says, "I'm not here to be nice." Lisa opened it. I was just finishing my tea when I heard Emily's voice cut through the air. "I want to talk to my mother alone." Lisa didn't move back. She looked back at me, waiting for a sign. I gave a small nod and she stepped aside, quiet, calm, there, always there. Emily rushed into the living room like she owned the place. Her eyes were crazy, her face tight. "I want the truth," she said. I didn't bother asking about what I already knew. "I talked to your lawyer," she went on. "He didn't tell me anything, but he didn't have to. I can feel it." I put my cup down softly. "And what do you feel, Emily?" She stared at me. "That you're giving everything to her. To Lisa, a stranger, over your own daughter." There was not worry, not sadness, not sorry feelings, just thinking she deserved it. I looked at her for a long time, my quiet making her uncomfortable. She hated when I didn't answer. He always had. "I gave you everything I had," I said finally. "My time, my energy, my life. And you gave me distance, blame, silence." "I didn't." "Yes," I stopped her quietly but firmly. "You did. And when I got sick, you didn't ask how to help. You asked how to pass it off to someone else." Her arms crossed over her chest. "Fighting back. Always fighting back. I have kids, Mom. A job. I can't just drop everything." "I did," I said. "I dropped everything for you over and over for years, and now I need someone, and you're mad that it's not you." She looked away, biting her lip. Then she snapped back. "He's tricking you." "She's caring for me," I said. "And there's a difference." Emily's voice got louder. "You're really leaving her everything after all I've done for you." I stood slowly. My body hurt. My legs were weak. But I stood anyway. "You never asked what I needed. Not once. You only saw what you thought you should get." Tears came to her eyes. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were anger, shock. "She's not family," she yelled. "No," I said. "She's better." And that broke her. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just froze. And then she whispered something I wish I could forget. "You'll be sorry for this." She turned and walked out without another word. The door slammed behind her. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't jump. Lisa came in a few minutes later, quiet as always. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. She just sat beside me. "I think she hates me now," I said. "She doesn't hate you," Lisa replied. "She just hates that you're not under her control anymore." I looked down at my hands. They used to be strong hands that raised a child, ran a house, carried too much weight. Now they shook when still. "He always said I was the strong one." I whispered, "You are." Lisa said, "You just forgot that being strong can say no too." That night I lay in bed thinking about everything. All the years I held back pain. All the ways I made excuses for how she acted. All the times I told myself she'd grow out of it or grow into love. But some people don't grow into love. They grow into wanting things. And when they don't get what they want, they hurt others. And now she couldn't hurt me anymore. I'd picked differently, and that choice was already changing everything. After that day, something inside the house changed. The quiet between Emily and me was no longer the kind that waited to be broken. It was the kind that built walls, cold, tall, and on purpose. She stopped coming entirely for days. No calls, no texts, just quiet. But it wasn't peaceful because outside the quiet she was busy. Lisa began to hear talk from the neighbors. "Is it true that woman is living there all the time now? I heard Margaret changed her will. Gave it all to the nurse. That poor daughter after everything she did for her mom." The pity wasn't for me. It was for Emily. She was making a picture of herself as the left-out daughter, the victim. And Lisa, she was the bad guy, the home wrecker, the trickster, the gold digger. I told Lisa to ignore it, but I could see the way it hurt her. She started staying away from the front yard. She stopped talking with the mailman. One night, I caught her crying quietly in the laundry room, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her hoodie. "This is my mess," I told her. "No," she said barely above a whisper. "I'm the one being blamed. And I can't even stand up for myself." I put a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to. I know the truth." But the damage was already creeping into the corners of the house. The kids, my grandchildren, they started pulling away too. Not a lot, not mean, but there was a holding back, a weight in their eyes. They came by less. They stopped asking Lisa for help with homework or snacks. One evening, my oldest grandson sat next to me on the porch. Quiet. "Mom said, you're mad at her," he mumbled. I looked at him, heartbreaking. "I'm not mad," I said. "I'm just tired of pretending things are okay when they're not." He stared at his shoes. She said, "Lisa's stealing our house." That hit me harder than any mean words ever had. Lisa came out with lemonade, saw the tension, and stopped. I shook my head gently and she went back without a word. I turned back to him. "Lisa isn't stealing anything. She's taking care of me." He didn't answer. He just nodded, uncomfortable, and changed the subject. After he left, I sat in the dark for a long time. Lisa joined me again and we watched the porch lights from the houses down the street turn on. One by one. "I should leave," she said finally. I turned to her, shocked. "What? If I go, maybe she'll back off. Maybe the kids will come back." I shook my head. "No, you don't get to be punished for being kind." She looked at me with tired eyes. "But I am." And I realized then that Emily's war wasn't just against me. It was never just about me. It was about anyone who gave me the love she refused to offer. She could not stand seeing someone else do what she would not, could not stand that I chose someone else. Not out of revenge, but because I needed someone. That week, Lisa was quieter, still warm, still helpful, but I felt her retreating into herself, protecting what was left of her heart. And I hated that because Emily did not just want to hurt me, she wanted to erase Lisa from my life. But I had made my choice and I had to defend it. The moment things shattered did not come with shouting or broken furniture. It came with the sound of fast, heavy footsteps. I was dozing in the living room under a blanket when the front door burst open. Lisa had left minutes earlier, so I assumed it was her until I heard Emily's voice, sharp and cold, asking where she was. Before I could fully sit up, she was already in the room, face flushed, eyes wild. I asked what she was doing, but she ignored me, repeating her question louder. "Where was Lisa?" I told her Lisa was not home yet and tried to calm myself as Emily began pacing and said, "Good, because if she saw Lisa again in her house, she would cut her off." And I told her, "This is not your house." The words landed like thunder and she froze, asking what I had said. I steadied my breath, trembling not just from illness but from all the years of swallowing her cold shoulders and harsh words, and I said, "You do not live here. You do not get to barge in or threaten anyone." She hissed that she was not threatening but protecting me, and I asked, "From who?" "From the only person who had not abandoned me in months." She narrowed her eyes, saying Lisa was using me. I stood with knees nearly giving in and said, "No, Emily. She is caring for me, something you stopped doing long ago." That hit her and she stepped back like I had struck her. I continued, saying she came like a storm, spreading lies, and now she wanted to push out the one who saved me. When she said Lisa was not family, I kept my voice low and told her, "Neither are you anymore." And that shattered her. Her lips trembled and her eyes filled, but she would not cry. She whispered that I did not mean it, but I stayed silent because part of me did. She looked around as if seeing the house for the first time. The grandkids' photos, the quilt Lisa brought from a thrift store, the neatly stacked medical files. This place was no longer hers, and it had not been for years. She turned toward the door with brittle words, saying I would regret this, but I did not stop her. I did not follow. I just sank into the couch, letting the silence wrap around me. Lisa came home minutes later and said nothing at first. She put down the groceries, looked at me, and understood. When she said she should stay elsewhere, I told her, "No. Emily is the one who needs to leave, not you." That night I lay awake, not from fear or doubt, but because for the first time in decades, I had drawn a line and I was not stepping back. I thought Emily had finally reached her limit, but I was wrong. Instead of retreating, she retaliated. It began quietly. A letter from a probate attorney asking to verify the validity of my new will, followed by a legal petition claiming I was unduly influenced. Lisa found the papers first, pale and shaking, and asked if I knew. I did not, but I was not surprised. Emily was not just hurt, she was humiliated, and in her world that meant retaliation. It did not matter that Lisa never asked for money or that my mind was still sharp. Emily believed love was a currency of proximity, not presence. I called my lawyer immediately and he said she had no case but warned me it would get messy. That word stayed with me for days. But Emily kept going. She called my siblings she had not spoken to in years. She called neighbors. She even tried to convince my doctor to sign a statement doubting my mental capacity, but he refused. Still the gossip spread. I felt it at the pharmacy, heard it in the grocery store. Even the nurse at the oncology clinic hesitated before asking if I had family support. Through it all, Lisa stayed without asking for defense or recognition. She just showed up again and again, refilling pill organizers, making bland meals, and sitting with me when the nights were hardest. One morning I found her cleaning the porch in silence, shoulders tight, and I asked if she was okay. She turned slowly and said she never wanted this. I knew she meant the chaos, not the care, and I told her she did more than she knew. Her eyes filled, but she blinked away the tears and asked, "Then why did it feel like punishment?" I had no answer. That evening, Emily returned again without knocking, the door creaking like thunder. Lisa was in the kitchen and Emily made a straight line to me, saying I could not see how Lisa was isolating me, how she made me think Emily was the enemy. I told her she made herself the enemy. When she said she was my daughter, I reminded her I was her mother. A mother she had taken for granted her entire adult life. When she turned to leave, she froze, seeing Lisa in the hallway. Their eyes locked, and for a moment I saw it, the hate in Emily's face. Not jealousy, but fear. Fear of losing control, fear of losing the story she told herself about being the good daughter. I said, "If you keep attacking those who love me, you will lose more than the inheritance. You will lose me." She said nothing, just slammed the door behind her like a warning shot. The next morning I called my lawyer again and told him I wanted everything documented. Every visit, every threat, every legal move. Because Emily might have declared war, but I was not fighting with fists. I was fighting with truth and boundaries and the clarity I should have claimed years ago. But even as I drew those lines, the cancer was drawing its own. By late summer my body was thinner than it had ever been. My bones jutted out like shadows under my skin, and the yellowish tint from too many pills and too little food made my reflection almost unrecognizable. The smallest tasks like brushing my hair or bathing became quiet triumphs, but Lisa never faltered. She adapted everything around me without stripping away my dignity, treating me with the same gentleness whether I could walk to the mailbox or barely stand. We did not speak much in those days. Not because there was nothing left to say, but because we had already said so much. And the silence between us became something warm, not empty. The grandkids came less often. Emily no longer brought them. But sometimes they arrived alone, riding their bikes and sitting beside me without words. Their presence said more than any apology ever could. One afternoon my youngest granddaughter placed a drawing in my lap. A bright crayon picture of Lisa and me both smiling with the words, "My two grandmas," written above, and I cried, not from fear but because I had finally felt what real love looked like and I did not want to leave it behind. Then one Sunday Emily returned, unannounced as always, but she was different this time, without makeup, without the armor of her designer things, just her and a small worn envelope. She stood silently in front of me and placed it on the table. When I asked what it was, she said it was a letter from Dad, one she had never shared before. As I held it, my hands trembling, I recognized his handwriting immediately. He had written it to her years ago, admitting he had been cruel, that I had left for good reason, and that she should forgive me. As I read, tears rolled down my cheeks and Emily stood still with her own tears falling quietly. She said she blamed me because it was easier than blaming him, and then she kept blaming me even when she knew better. I looked at her and asked, "What now?" She answered with cracked words that she knew she had failed me, and for the first time I believed her because her voice was not performative. It was just raw and human. Lisa returned just then and stood in the doorway, unsure of what she had walked into. Emily turned to her and said she was wrong, that she had let pride and fear drive her, and Lisa simply nodded without a word. Then Emily turned back to me and said she did not expect anything. Not forgiveness, not the house, not even a place in my life, and that she just needed to say it. For the first time I reached for her hand and told her I did not hate her, but I could not pretend we had not changed. She nodded, understanding, and left without a word, without a slammed door. Just the hush of something long overdue finally ending. Lisa sat beside me as the sun dropped behind the trees and asked if I was okay. I said I was just tired, not from illness but from carrying years of unspoken pain, and I was done chasing love in places where it had to be earned and rationed. Now I had said what needed to be said and heard what needed to be heard, and forgiveness did not come like a thunderclap. Sometimes it came as quietly as a lock clicking open. The day I finally let go was not loud. The sun came through the kitchen window in that golden light that makes everything look softer. Lisa was humming a tune I did not know while slicing apples, the scent of cinnamon filling the air. The next morning I called my lawyer again and told him I wanted everything documented. Every visit, every threat, every legal move. Because Emily might have declared war, but I was not fighting with fists. I was fighting with truth and boundaries and the clarity I should have claimed years ago. But even as I drew those lines, the cancer was drawing its own. By late summer my body was thinner than it had ever been. My bones jutted out like shadows under my skin, and the yellowish tint from too many pills and too little food made my reflection almost unrecognizable. The smallest tasks like brushing my hair or bathing became quiet triumphs, but Lisa never faltered. She adapted everything around me without stripping away my dignity, treating me with the same gentleness whether I could walk to the mailbox or barely stand. We did not speak much in those days, not because there was nothing left to say but because we had already said so much, and the silence between us became something warm, not empty. The grandkids came less often. Emily no longer brought them, but sometimes they arrived alone, riding their bikes and sitting beside me without words. Their presence said more than any apology ever could. One afternoon my youngest granddaughter placed a drawing in my lap, a bright crayon picture of Lisa and me both smiling with the words, "My two grandmas" written above, and I cried, not from fear but because I had finally felt what real love looked like and I did not want to leave it behind. Then one Sunday Emily returned, unannounced as always, but she was different this time, without makeup, without the armor of her designer things, just her and a small worn envelope. She stood silently in front of me and placed it on the table. When I asked what it was, she said it was a letter from Dad, one she had never shared before. As I held it, my hands trembling, I recognized his handwriting immediately. He had written it to her years ago, admitting he had been cruel, that I had left for good reason, and that she should forgive me. As I read, tears rolled down my cheeks and Emily stood still with her own tears falling quietly. She said she blamed me because it was easier than blaming him, and then she kept blaming me even when she knew better. I looked at her and asked, "What now?" She answered with cracked words that she knew she had failed me, and for the first time I believed her because her voice was not performative. It was just raw and human. Lisa returned just then and stood in the doorway, unsure of what she had walked into. Emily turned to her and said she was wrong, that she had let pride and fear drive her, and Lisa simply nodded without a word. Then Emily turned back to me and said she did not expect anything. Not forgiveness, not the house, not even a place in my life, and that she just needed to say it. For the first time I reached for her hand and told her I did not hate her, but I could not pretend we had not changed. She nodded, understanding, and left without a word, without a slammed door, just the hush of something long overdue finally ending. Lisa sat beside me as the sun dropped behind the trees and asked if I was okay. I said I was just tired, not from illness but from carrying years of unspoken pain, and I was done chasing love in places where it had to be earned and rationed. Now I had said what needed to be said and heard what needed to be heard, and forgiveness did not come like a thunderclap. Sometimes it came as quietly as a lock clicking open. The day I finally let go was not loud. The sun came through the kitchen window in that golden light that makes everything look softer. Lisa was humming a tune I did not know while slicing apples, the scent of cinnamon filling the air, and I was wrapped in a blanket in my favorite chair by the window, watching the trees sway like they had been waiting for me to see them again. Then Emily came by, unannounced but without tension this time. No makeup, no walls up, just her holding a tray with a scone and a cup of tea. When she said she brought my favorite, I smiled and asked if she remembered, and she nodded, placing the tray gently before me and asking if she could stay a while. I told her she already was. We sat that way in peace. No old wounds reopened, no accusations, just a mother and daughter sitting together. She told me she knew things could not go back to how they were, and I agreed, saying they should not, but they could move forward. She said she did not deserve forgiveness, and I told her honestly that she did not, but I was giving it anyway. When she asked why, I said because forgiveness was not about freeing her. It was about freeing me. Lisa entered then and froze at the sight of Emily, and I held my breath until Emily said quietly that she was sorry for all of it. Lisa gave a small nod and said, "Thank you," and it was not dramatic, not tearful, just a shared acknowledgement, like people who had survived different storms now standing on the same ground. For once, Emily stayed for dinner and helped Lisa in the kitchen. Though they did not talk much, there was no tension, just a delicate new peace. When they both stepped out of the room, I opened the folder with my updated will and reread it slowly. Every name, every decision unchanged, not out of anger, but because the choices had always been rooted in truth, not revenge. Emily was no longer the center of my story, and that was okay, because my story would be remembered in the hearts of those who had loved me fully. The grandchildren who would remember my laughter, the woman who gave me care when the world went cold, and the part of me that finally chose myself over obligation. That night I wrote a letter, not for Emily or Lisa, but for me, and in it I said I was proud of the woman who said enough, who gave without fear, who stopped waiting to be chosen and chose herself instead. I folded it gently, placed it in the drawer beside my bed, and lay down with the smallest smile, because this story did not end with revenge. It ended with freedom. And after everything, that was more than enough.